I've been trying to figure out why self-help fails, and for a long time I couldn't locate the problem, at least not to a degree that satisfied me. The advice isn't always wrong. The people selling it aren't always grifters, and the people buying it aren't always stupid, and yet something is broken, and it's something that nobody quite names. And then I came across an observation about television, about how shows, as they mature, tend to get worse. Not sloppier, just more refined. The rough edges that made early seasons feel alive and interesting, or gave the sense that something was still being figured out, all of that gets smoothed away. And what's left is formula. It's just been reduced to whatever was apparently working and attracting an audience. It's still watchable, it's still successful, but sometimes it can feel hollow by comparison. And I thought, that's exactly it. That's self-help. Refinement itself pointed at the wrong target. It's not incompetence. It's not dishonesty. Self-help is a maintenance industry disguised as a transformation industry. The business model doesn't survive your success. It requires your continued enrollment. And that's not a flaw in execution. That's the structure. Go back far enough and self-help was modest. Dale Carnegie, Samuel Smiles. If you read them, you'll find a quiet assumption underneath everything. You are a person with limits, living a life with constraints, and improvement means functioning a little better inside the situation you're already in. It's contextual, provisional. It's finished when it's finished. Modern self-help abandons that assumption entirely. Somewhere along the way, the question shifts from how do I live better to how do I become the best, most optimized version of myself? And that sounds like an upgrade, but it's actually a trap. The first question has an answer, and the second one doesn't. It recedes the closer you get, like a horizon that moves as you walk toward it. And this isn't a decline in quality or understanding. This is simply what happens when helping people becomes an industry. Industries need scale. Scale needs standardization. And you cannot package navigate your particular life a little better. That's too specific, too contextual, too resistant to method. What you can package is become your best, most optimized self. It's abstract enough to sell to everyone, to anyone. It's vague enough to never, ever resolve. So here's what the industry actually delivers. Not solutions, but maintenance. Think about how bureaucracies work. In theory, they exist to solve problems. In practice, they persist by managing them. If the problem disappeared, so would the bureau. So the system develops something like an immune response to resolution. It learns to metabolize every failure into a reason for continued operation. And self-help works the same way, but with a twist. The problems it manages are vague by design. Self-limiting beliefs, fixed mindset, not living up to your potential. These aren't concrete deficits with measurable solutions. They're ordinary human discomfort dressed in somewhat clinical language, broad enough to apply to anyone and persistent enough to never fully get resolved. And when someone doesn't improve, the method is never questioned. The person is told they didn't commit fully, they didn't execute correctly, they didn't want it bad enough, they didn't up their frequency. Whatever the excuse is, it's always placed on the individual. The structure stays intact while they absorb the failure. But here's the thing about bureaucracies. They can be recognized for what they are. And in that recognition, you can resist them. What makes self-help so durable is that it doesn't stay outside you. It gets in. The industry doesn't just sell methods. It also purports to provide guidance. It installs a way of relating to yourself. You learn to monitor your habits, audit your thoughts, track your progress, and confess your shortcomings. The guru doesn't need to follow you around. You follow yourself using metrics and rubrics you borrowed from them. Standards you inherited from content creators you barely remember following and content that you barely remember consuming. The language is all liberation, agency, empowerment, growth, discipline, mindset. But the practice, the actual practice, is just self-surveillance. And the deepest trick is this. Resistance starts to feel like failure. Walk away from the method and you're not thinking critically. You're making excuses. You're proving you're not ready. You're not willing to put in the work. So the loop closes. And the only way to succeed is to keep going. The only way to fail is to stop. So step back. What is the industry actually doing? It takes ordinary human dissatisfaction, the kind that everyone feels, the kind that might just be part of being alive, and it reframes the dissatisfaction as some sort of deficiency. It's a personal problem requiring expert intervention. It manufactures definitions of your best self that are abstract enough to chase forever. It teaches you to see yourself through its eyes. And then it calls this whole package self-help. But the self isn't being helped. The self is the raw material. And this is where the incentive structure clarifies everything. The industry sustains itself on the gap between who you are and who it has taught you to want to become. If you close that gap and the relationship ends, the self-help industry crumbles. So the gap doesn't close. It can't. The model won't work if you arrive at that conclusion. This is the quiet tyranny buried in the name. Self-help suggests you're the one being served, but the word self is bait, not identity. It's branding and marketing, not description. The apparatus doesn't serve your interests. It monetizes your participation. Television fosters parasocial relationships where viewers feel connected to characters played by actors who will never know that these people actually exist in the real world. Self-help gives us something closer to a parasitic version of this. Gurus who need your continued inadequacy to survive, who profit from the distance between who you are and who they've convinced you're supposed to be. And the machine doesn't want you whole. It wants you to be enrolled in perpetuity in whatever program it is offering, the same as you ever were, but believing you're transforming. And of course, always coming back for more. And this is why the failure is sociological, not psychological. It's not personal. It's not about weak people failing to follow good advice. It's about a structure that requires your permanent dissatisfaction to survive, that grows by keeping the wound open. Once you see it here, you start seeing it everywhere. Wellness culture, productivity content, platforms designed to reward engagement over resolution. The vocabulary shifts. The machinery never does. And sociology won't necessarily free you from these structures. Nothing will fully if you're complicit with them. But it does offer something else. The clarity to see them for what they are. And that's what I'm sharing with you now. You get to recognize that the dissatisfaction you feel has been cultivated, that the goals you're chasing were manufactured elsewhere, and that falling short of them says nothing about your effort or your worth. There's one more thing that stands out to me about accelerating toward perfection. Whether you're a person or a television show, both suffer from main character syndrome in their own way, but the show succeeds or fails on its own merits. The person takes on something heavier, a burden of unrealistic expectations and a creeping sense of entitlement to a life that was never promised to them. And the self-help industry is nothing if not expert at telling you that you need a new script. But do you? What if the script you're following is precisely the right one? What if the problems you're trying to solve only exist by comparison, by holding your life up against someone else's highlight reel and calling the difference a deficit? Following someone else's script won't fix that. It can't. The gap isn't real. It was manufactured and you were sold the measuring tape. The voice telling you you're not enough, that is not yours. It was never yours, and it was never free. Someone profits every single time it repeats. If there's any self-help worth the name, it might start with a different question. Not how do I become my best self, but who benefits when I believe I'm not there yet?